All right, we're back. Hey, thank you so much for tuning in to 1700 AM ESPN Radio and sharing your lunch hour with us. This is the Mike Litton Show. I'm your host, Mike Litton. I'm in studio with two of my favorite people, Jesus Garcia from our Keller Williams office and Kathy Majum, Vice President of Personal Lines with Orr & Associates. If you haven't called her for your insurance needs, you need to do it right now. 951-331-7614. 951-331-7614. I could not recommend her higher if I tried. And we've known each other, several years now, and you're just amazing, absolutely amazing. And I really appreciate you being here, and I appreciate everything you do for us to help us in our everyday lives. So this is our Winning with Wealth segment. And what I wanted to do was talk about how, let me give you an example. The other day, I called you for a quote. You were $400 a year less just on the homeowner's insurance for this particular homeowner. $400 a year, right? That's not small money. And then when you start looking at auto insurance and you start looking at all these other types of insurance that you can do, there's a thing called bundling in your industry, right?
Right.
Talk a little bit about that and how people can save money, because I know you really well, and I know what you can do by experience. When you can save somebody $200, $300, $400 a month sometimes, I mean, that's unbelievable. And then you turn around and take that money and use it for things like investments or college funds or whatever. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think it's really important, for one, if you have your insurance in several different locations,
right,
you're not doing yourself justice, because every carrier will give you extra credits. They will go anywhere from 5% up to 20%.
And why is that? Talk about why.
Well, because they're taking, you have more of a risk when you're taking it all on with one carrier, so they know that you are insured properly. Because they have your auto, they have your home, they have your umbrella policy, they have your rental property, so they know that it's insured correctly.
So it's like using somebody you trust in a business, right?
And plus, I think it's easier that in times of a claim, as the 07 fires, people had no idea, well, now, which carrier has this and which has this, versus just picking up the phone and calling me.
Yeah.
My phone was ringing off the hook at 4 in the morning, and I was getting out there to help people that were being evacuated because I had everything.
Right.
And they didn't have to worry about who had this or who had that. And a lot of times people don't realize that when they call, you're right, I can save them $400 a year, but then when I talk to them, it's like, okay, but who has your auto? And now that $400 turns into maybe $500 because I've added the auto.
Right.
And so it has the cross credits.
Yeah.
And that's what people have to understand. I mean, the more you put together with a carrier, the more discounts you get, and the more overall savings you have if you want to go out and buy a rental property or if you want to put away for school.
See, I think that's a great point. I didn't realize that they incentivize you to do this because it helps them in terms of risk.
Right.
So, like, for instance, if your house burns to the ground, your car burns to the ground too.
Right.
Right. There was a guy that knew a guy that my dad knew, a friend of his, and he had a Ferrari in his garage, and his house burned to the ground in the wildfires, and all there was left was a stream of aluminum, molten aluminum. Right, because the engine was aluminum,
right,
the frame was everything was aluminum, including the wheels. Right, everything was melted, and all it was a puddle of aluminum in his garage when it was all said and done.
Wow.
So it's scary, So, but it's one of those things where when your house burns to the ground, your car burns to the ground with it. You're looking, like you're saying, you're looking around trying to figure out, okay, who is it that has my car? Who has my home? That kind of thing. If you have it all together and the insurance company knows that's their insurance company and you've got good coverage, that is something that helps them in terms of risk. I never thought of it that way, but that makes sense.
And what scares me is that, let's say you have your auto insurance with a different carrier and you haven't talked to that carrier forever and you've got state minimum coverage. So you've only got 1530. Meanwhile, you're buying a home, and all of a sudden, you don't have the right coverage because now you've put yourself at a liability risk of a lawsuit.
Right.
Because you now have an asset because you just purchased a home.
Right.
But you don't have the right auto insurance. So now, and you don't talk to that auto carrier because you don't have anything to do with them, versus if I already had your auto and now you call because you're buying a home, okay, well, we need to raise your auto because we have to make sure you're insured properly because you're now having an asset.
Absolutely.
And that is why it is really good to have everything with one agent. So they know what you're doing. They can, bundle your packages together. They can make sure you're insured properly. And a lot of times, I see state minimum liability on autos when we insure the homes.
And that makes a lot of sense. I never thought of it that way. I didn't realize that was the case. So off air
Right.
during the break,
Right.
we were talking about renter's insurance and talking about women that were reading their phone and things are getting taken.
Right.
Talk a little bit about that real quick, because we solve all the world's problems, just so you know, when we're off air.
Well, I think what people don't realize is that this is the highest time of year for theft.
Oh, yeah.
Cars are broken into, homes are broken into, and a lot of times people think, "Well, I just live in an apartment. I don't need anything. I mean, I don't own anything." Well, but you do, because unfortunately, everything you own inside that apartment, what happens if it's gone tomorrow? I mean, what happens to all your clothing? What happens to your furniture? It's more than that. You also get the minimum of $100,000 in liability. So if anyone were to sue you or come after you, or if your little dog bit a neighbor next door, you have that protection. But also, what happens if you're evacuated during the fires? Like all those people that were in '07, they didn't own it, but they had to go and try to find a place, rent an apartment. You get reimbursed for that.
Right.
I mean, it's almost like being a homeowner, except we're not covering the dwelling.
Right.
So you still have all that protection.
And talk about that for a second. There's a apartment complex
Yes,
in
right by
Escondido
my house.
that
Yep.
shall remain nameless,
Right.
right? But there were 2 cars that caught fire overnight.
Right.
Okay. The fire department comes out. They put the 2 cars out. One car caught fire, caught the other one on fire.
Right.
So that person's insurance company is going to come after the other person's insurance company, right?
Well, they're going to find out first how the fire got started.
Oh yeah.
Was it arson or?
But if one started the other one,
Right.
right? Okay. So they put those out. The fire department leaves. The news crew shows
Yep.
up, and a third car
Right.
is on fire, and they have to call the fire department back out.
Right.
Right. The fire department didn't realize there was a car sitting there that was smoldering or whatever. I guess
Right.
you know. So it's interesting. It's interesting, and that was an apartment complex. That was under a carport in an apartment complex in Escondido. And so, and we, like we talked about, we drive by it twice a day, you know. So it's important that people understand. Talk a little bit about that, because just because you live in an apartment complex, you need this kind of coverage.
Well, you do, because you still own everything. I
Absolutely.
mean, kids' bikes get stolen. I have had renters where a unit upstairs had a flood,
Right.
and came down onto their property and
ruined all their
stuff.
Yeah.
That's all covered.
Okay.
And
That's
a
cool.
lot of carriers start at minimum of $15,000, and it can go all the way up. But an average $25,000 limit on a renter's policy is about $125 a year.
Wow.
I mean, that's nothing monthly.
That's
It
like
really is nothing, and it
$10
covers
or
you
something.
for exactly that. You know, temporary living expenses, liability, med pay. If somebody comes into your property and they get hurt at, let's say you're throwing a dinner party and somebody cuts their finger and needs a couple stitches, you've got that coverage if you have renter's insurance to take care of that person.
Awesome.
So, I mean, for a little over $100 a year, you're almost crazy not to have it.
Yeah, I
But
agree.
you also need to, which points out, with it being this time of year, for all you ladies that get wonderful jewelry for Christmas, make sure you let your insurance people know, because that is something you need coverage for. I mean,
Yeah.
you need to make sure that you insure those items that when houses are broken into, the 2 things they go for are guns and jewelry.
See, I always thought Santa brought jewelry. That's what I was always told. Hey, so talk a little bit about shopping. So they're out shopping, they're looking at their phone, they're not paying attention to what's
They're-
going
right.
on, and things get stolen. How is that covered, and how does that work?
Well, it would be covered under theft.
Okay.
And if they're actually warning people right now, because, and I watched it the other day actually, women are going to their cars and they're on their phone and they're texting and they have a bunch of bags in their hands, and meanwhile you got somebody following you right behind you.
Yeah.
And they'll wait to jump you to take your packages because you're not paying attention to your surroundings.
Yeah.
Also, they're waiting for people to spend all day shopping on a Saturday, go out to their car, put it all in the trunk, and then go back
Let's
in
steal the
shopping.
car, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, what's the first thing they're going to do? I mean, there are people literally just walking around parking lots looking to break into cars that do that. You know, women, don't lay your purse on the front seat. I mean, don't ask to be having your car broken into.
Right.
There are places in the mall that you can do check-ins and to leave packages, but don't keep going in and out and then telling people, no, I'm going back in to go shopping, and they see you put all the stuff. That all will be covered, however, under renter's insurance, homeowner's insurance, if it's broken into. It's not covered under your auto policy. So it only.
See, that's something to know. People
Yeah.
don't realize that.
Well, it's not. The only thing covered under your auto is anything that's permanently installed.
Right.
Those are covered under your homeowners.
So
And
if a camera's sitting on the back
that's
seat
your homeowners.
and they break in and they steal it, like
Right.
they break the window and they
Okay,
steal
now you have
it,
two claims. Because
Right.
you have the auto claim
where they broke the
where
window.
they broke the window, and then you got the homeowners or renters claim. So you're going to have two deductibles.
Right.
And that's what people don't understand. What was in my car, so it should be covered under my car. No, it's covered under your renters. And a lot of people don't have renters insurance. And I don't think they realize just how cheap it is and what it really covers.
Yeah.
They just assume because they don't own it, they don't have to have that. But, you know, what happens if you were to come home and like that apartment complex, but it wasn't the car? What if it was the next door neighbor and now you come home and everything you have inside is gone?
Yeah.
You know, you're going to have to go to Jerome's. You're going to have to go finance. You're going to have to go pay for all of that.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's easily resolved by just taking out a policy.
Well, I'm so glad you're here.
Oh, well,
One
thank
of the
you.
things that happened the other day with me was I went to the mall and I watched a lady take her purse, true story, take
Yeah.
her purse and put it in a shopping bag.
Yeah.
Took her purse, put it in a shopping bag. Now, this purse had leather straps that she could have put over her arm.
Right.
Instead, she put it in a shopping bag, and I wanted to go up to her and say, you know something? I used to work in retail, and I did. I used to work in retail, and I would always, if a lady put her purse in her shopping cart, right, and left it there and like turned her back or whatever, I'd come over and go, you know, that's not a good idea.
Yeah, I fell a girl, but
Let's zip it up, put it on her arm.
Open.
Yeah,
and
the
it was
whole
like,
deal. It's
the whole
like-
back end was open. I thought I could just reach in and just take her wallet, and
Yeah.
that's what they're doing right now. So
Yeah.
you have to protect yourself.
And people are, you know, reading their phones, like you said, they're reading their
Right.
phones nowadays, and they're not paying attention to things. Back when I was in retail, they didn't have phones to look at, right? But they'd be looking at their shopping list
Right.
and not paying attention to what's going on. They turn their back to the cart, and it only takes 2 seconds. Somebody lines themselves up. It only takes 2 seconds. Now, I used to get a hold of those people myself, and they never came back, right? But it's one of those things where they got to a point all those years, this is a long time ago, they got to a point all those years ago where they would fire you as an employee if you arrested people, if you kept them, if you chased them, if you confronted them at all, you'd get fired. Nowadays, they just want you to let them walk.
Right.
I mean, it's one of the most dangerous things I've ever seen. But it's one of those things that people need to realize. They need to be aware. This is the time to be vigilant. This is the time to be aware of your surroundings. Don't read your email or your text messages and that type of thing until after you're in a secure place.
Right.
In your car with your doors locked, ladies, right?
Yep, that's
and
right.
men, I mean, it happens to men too. I watched it happen. I
Right.
watched men get things stolen from them all the time because they just didn't pay attention. And my kids and my wife think I'm paranoid. The people around me think I'm paranoid. I'm not. I'm just careful
Well,
because
that's
I
how you
watch
have
it
to be.
and I watch these things happen.
Right.
You know. So anyway, all right. So when we come back, we're going to talk about building a better community. It's our fourth segment, and we always talk about how we build a better community. One of the things we're going to do today is we're going to celebrate Habitat for Humanity and the project that they just dedicated in Escondido. When we come back, we'll be right back. I've got Kathy Majum in house with me. I've got